Hey guys, John Faulkner here with Survival Dispatch, and today I got Angry American with me, back in studio.
Finally.
And
we have our permission slips.
we have our permission slips.
Yeah.
So there was one question that has come up through the pandemic that is quasi still going on, however you want to say it. You know, plandemic.
Have you seen the video? That video?
Yeah. COVID-19.
Awesome.
This was a question that every single time we did a live here on YouTube, every single time we put a Facebook post up, if we asked for questions, it was always a question. And what was that, sir?
Yeah. What are the chances of martial law being declared? Sorry, I had to think of how to phrase that without being obnoxious or rude.
And it was asked time and time and time again. Do you think martial law is going to happen? How is it going to happen? What's it going to look like? How are they going to enforce it? And Chris and I are here to do a little talky talk on it.
It's never going to happen, folks. And as experience very recent, like here in the last couple of weeks, have demonstrated, they don't need to. Everybody will fall in line like good little ducklings and do exactly what they're told when they're told to do it. But the reason martial law will never happen, folks, is math.
Let's first start with this, in case there's anybody out there that does not know what martial law is. Give them the quick definition.
Well, it's the suspension of all civil liberties and civil government and a military government being instituted where you then fall under the UCMJ and you have no civil rights, no habeas corpus, none of that stuff. You can be detained and definitely for as long as martial law exists. But you know, there's actually no definition anywhere in the Constitution for martial law.
Yeah.
The framers of the Constitution did talk about it in their papers, and that's one of the things I think people always overlook is when they're referencing constitutional ideas and concepts, is to go read some of the stuff these men were writing when they were discussing these things at the time. Yeah. And there was talk of martial law. It wasn't written into the Constitution, but you know, it said it should only be used in extreme circumstances and for as short a period of time as absolutely necessary. So, but it's just not going to happen, you know, and the reason is math.
Yeah.
You know, there's 800-odd thousand, I think, sworn law enforcement officers in the country. If you want to take all service members, there's a couple million service personnel, DOD, and whatnot. So, all right, we'll just be generous, call it 3 million. There's 330 million people in this country.
1%.
265 million of those people are between 15 and 55?
Something like that.
Roughly?
Yeah, it's around there. Yeah.
And if you are prior service, then you know that classification is fighting age males. Not that there's 265 men, but that's a big ass population to try to control. And it's not physically possible. But they don't need to, because government operates via what?
Media.
And the threat of force.
Yeah.
That's all they have to do is they have to threaten force. That's all they have to do to you. And most people don't want to deal with that, and they'll do whatever the hell they're told.
Yeah.
We saw small incidences of civil disobedience, very small ones. And the media, which cracks me up, like the salon owner in Texas is the greatest example to me, because the media was trying to crucify this lady.
Yep.
And the judge gave her 7 days in jail, and they're like, good, because she's selfish, and she's this, and she's that. And then the governor of Texas and the Texas AG came out and said, no, you need to let her go. The governor of Texas, he actually impressed me, because he's like, I'm going to pay her $7,000 fine, and I will serve house arrest on her behalf. Texas, you guys got a pretty good guy right there, at least on that call.
Yeah.
You know, but the media was hailing her persecution, not prosecution, persecution. And then it kind of backfired on them.
Yeah, and you know, and I get this question quite often, you know, is what would it look like? What would, you know, and I tell people, take the number of sworn officers that you have in your city, your county, whatever it is, and, you know, think about it for a second. We live in a town with the surrounding areas and stuff, 350,000 are probably in this surrounding area. We have a couple hundred sworn officers, a couple hundred, you know? I mean, just go stand out on whatever the closest busy street to where you live is. Stand there and see how often you see a police car drive by. It's impossible. It is impossible. You know, to...
Depending on the neighborhood you live in.
Yeah, it's impossible to really, you know, keep control
yeah.
over such a large area.
It is impossible.
And what you're seeing through this current experience is we said all the time, we sat here as a nation and said, we have plenty of hospital beds if anything were to ever happen. And then something happened, they're like, oh, we could be outran by tenfold.
But you
see that? But it'd be the same. It'd be the same with officers.
And then too, look at the whole. Remember the whole ventilator thing. The whole ventilator. Now I was being told by medical professionals back in March that would not be the appropriate treatment. Actually, and now it's come out that that was a really bad idea. We shouldn't have done that. We're killing people. And we're seeing too that their initial numbers that they projected were way out of the ballpark. Everything that they've done in response to this so far has been wrong. They've done nothing right. And if anyone wants to say, well, shutting down the schools is the right thing, well, we can look at Sweden, we can look at Taiwan, we can look at South Korea. There's a number of countries that had an awesome response to the virus and didn't go full batshit banana boat crazy like we did here. South Korea did a great job. Taiwan did a great job. And even Sweden, which they're having a little bit of an issue at the moment, but maybe their curve is a little slower. But you know how many kids have died, and by kids I mean under the age of 15, from COVID?
Actually,
when I did the numbers the other day, it was 6. 6. So they always say, if you always hear the phrase, if it just saves one child's life, it's worth it. Is it really worth it? Is it really? You think about the disruptions to the, I think it's 64 or 65 million people under the age of 15 in this country. 6 have died. Was it worth it to the other tens of millions to disrupt their lives in that manner? Because think about, well, the kids can't go to school and they can't go to daycare. So now somebody has to stay home and take care of them. But you can't send them to somebody else's house because the governor said you can't do that either. Think about the box that they were painting people into. And it was a no-win situation.
And situations like that are why so many people always want to talk about martial law. Because it's just going to come down to the point where they're going to, as we kind of saw in China, they're going to board you into your house, they're going to weld you into your house. And that's almost what would have to be done in order to try to control it.
They could declare martial law. I mean, they could come out and say this is martial law. And if everybody goes along with it and stays home, which essentially kind of happened for a few weeks, then in essence you have martial law. But the minute people decide, screw this, we're done, it all falls apart. The wheels come off the train.
And that's where, and you've heard like me and Chris and Charlie Hogwood and stuff on this channel talk about, there's quasi-been brushes with martial law. We like to use other terms. It's like snitches get stitches, but if you self-report, that's okay. It's still giving the same thing. The self-quarantine, that's the lower end of martial law.
Absolutely.
But it was never enforced, for the most part, by officials, government, for the most part, with force. And that's what people think martial law looks like.
Yeah, they think it means military checkpoints and people being rounded up and carted off to God knows where for whatever purpose. And like we said, I mean, it would take, I forget the numbers, how many divisions it would take, like to close down New York City as an example. Of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of soldiers it would take to shut that one city down if they decided to declare martial law. Expand that out nationwide. And then too, step away from the cities out to you just drive 10 minutes west of here and you're in fields and pastures, like out where I live, I'm in the boonies. There ain't enough boots to put on the ground to try to control that place.
And people will try to bring up, I know you guys are going to bring up New Rochelle, New York, where they kind of enforce martial law in a way. Listen, they made a bubble around a circle of a hotbed. But when you talk about a
3 square miles too, like it
was
like
small. One.
Was it 1 square mile? It was like a small place. I know that.
But it was one of those things where when you start talking about highly densely populated areas, it isn't that hard to control.
Oh no.
You could take a skyrise and put an officer on each corner of it and keep people in the building.
Well, and for that matter, if it's only got 2 doors, you just cut the force in half.
Right.
You keep people in the building until critical mass is reached.
Right.
Where there's more of them there than they can shoot with the ammo they have.
And so when you start talking about highly densulated populations, yes, it is easier to control. When you start talking about spreading that out over larger and larger areas, the numbers are just not feasible for there to be total control. And that's what I would consider martial law.
Well, yeah, that's
total,
absolute lockdown, yes.
Absolute control.
Well, then you saw, they started, so municipalities, understanding they don't have the manpower to do that sort of thing, they started using drones. And then they had the snitch lines. And the ones that cracked me up the best was New York, where they had their snitch line, where you just text photos of your neighbors out walking the dog or washing the car. God forbid you be outside. And they had to take it down because what'd they get? Tens of thousands of dick pics. Literally, that's what they got. And they had to take the thing down. That was civil disobedience. That was people being like, yeah, what do you think of that, state of New York? Literally.
Yeah.
But think about that. If the state, capital S, lower S, whichever one you want to use, can tell you that you cannot go outside, what liberty do you have? And then you throw on top of that, that idiot Newsom in California has just come out and said now that if what's the term they're using? Contact tracing. Tracing. So if you're diagnosed positive with COVID, they're going to come remove you from your home and put you in a county facility. So now the government's telling you that you can't go outside, nor can you be sick in your own house.
Right.
Again, what imaginary liberties do we possess at this point?
Yeah, and and this was something that Chris and I had talked about, and we're like, hey, let's do a quick video on it.
Yeah.
What we would like to hear is your comments on what you think martial law would look like, and if it's possible here in America or anywhere in the world. So comment below, leave your suggestions, leave your comments, leave your responses. Make sure you hit that like button also, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
And have a good weekend.